Welcome to Forum 360 on Fusion, your PBS channel. Thank you for joining us on our global outlook with a local view. This is Leslie Ungar, your host today. When you graduate cum laude, I imagine you think the world is yours and that the world is limitless. For our guest today, Associated Press Awards and Emmy Awards followed. Life was good. And then one day, one night to be exact, you make a bad decision and your life is changed for what seems like forever. I don't know about you, but I've made a lot of bad decisions. I was just lucky that at the time I made them, everyone was not armed with a cell phone, with a camera, and a desire to get on that photo on social media first. Our guest today, Catherine Bosley, refers to them as digital dangers. While no one expects to fall victim to social media harassment, no one is immune. Not Catherine, not you. Her own very personal story sheds light on why and how to take inventory of your own vulnerability. More alarming though, she will point out to you how much of the risk is brought on unknowingly by ourselves and our own actions online and off. Catherine gives you the know-how, tools to better protect yourself, those you love, and even your business. Forum 360 welcomes Catherine Bosley, TV personality, author, speaker, and cyberbullying expert to Forum 360.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And welcome. Catherine, take us back to 2003.
Yes.
And first take us to some of the things that were going on in your life at the time before you went on that Key West vacation.
Right. Well, you know, I was in my 30s and I was told that I had defective heart. No one knew. I went my whole life not knowing, and all of a sudden I'm having to have open heart surgery to save my life. So that's a bit traumatic in itself, and it takes a little time to get over. And then I get a second blow when I developed a lung disease, a life-threatening lung disease, that I went from running a marathon then after my open heart to a hospital bed, unable to speak a full sentence without breathing treatments, to open lung surgery in just a matter of a few weeks. And with the open lung surgery, you know, with open heart surgery, you knew you were going to get better. That was the idea. With the open lung surgery, it was really just for biopsy, so they couldn't tell you exactly if you're going to get better or not. So I went on for about several months on experimental drug therapy, hoping that that would save my life, and understanding that the prognosis was very grim. So I was in fear for my life. And then finally, a test showed that the experimental drug therapy was working. My lungs were starting to clear out and I was going to live. So my husband and I decided we're going to celebrate and we're going to go to Key West. That's where we honeymooned just a year before. So we're going to celebrate our 1-year anniversary and that I was going to live. It's great. We're having a wonderful time out there. And something rises up inside me and I realize I am going to live. This is all good. We've got a new future together. And I step out of character in a way I never imagined I could, and in a way so many young people do today. And I so regretted it. And it was just silliness. But little did I know there was a professional company there recording it all. There were two websites there recording the whole thing.
Now, for anyone that's not been to Key West, yes, it's tiny and it does feel like you are somewhere away from the rest of the world,
miles
right?
Away from my home, right? Yes.
Now, you and your husband make a pact that what happened in Key West stays in Key West.
Right. That we would learn from it, and we would never do anything like that again, and go back to who we were always, our characters that we always were, and our true selves. And and so we go on, and then about 9-10 months later, I retrieve a phone call on Christmas morning. We're getting ready for a huge party at our house. I'm running around doing all these odds and ends, and I notice the message, and I hit play, and my world is rocked.
Now, before we listen to it, I'm curious, you kept the audio to this day.
Right.
From 1993. You kept the audio of a phone call.
2003.
2003.
Yes.
You kept the audio from a phone call of a person to this day you have not identified, correct?
Right, yes.
Okay.
I don't know who made that phone call.
So although you went on to do a TED Talk, which is a great TED Talk, and
Thank you.
it's great to have the audio.
It's a fantastic experience, yeah.
But what before we hear, I want you to tell people before they hear what caused you to keep that and not to delete it, not so that your husband never heard it. Was there a feeling of, I'm going to delete this so no one in the world ever knows it existed besides me? You not only shared it, but you kept it. So share
Right.
with us before we hear
Well,
it.
I think I was, number one, really curious who it was, and I wanted to see if other people might recognize it, and I wanted to listen to it to make sure I'm clear that I'm hearing what I'm hearing, and that this nightmare is starting to develop. So yeah, I felt that I needed to have it.
So it's Christmas Day, 8-9 months later. You think you've gone on and the world has forgotten, and then you get this phone call.
Right, and I'm a TV news anchor in Youngstown, Ohio. So yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Rick and Catherine, or should I say Rick and Kathy from Kent. Just want to let you know that the video from Girls Gone Wild has hit the Youngstown area. You're being shown Catherine or Kathy from Kent, as you know. I guess that's your stage name. It's being shown from everywhere from Channel to Bar and Grill. Everyone has seen you in your full entire. Honey, your days are over. You think you're such a prissy little but your days are over. Have a very Merry Christmas.
So you end up losing your job,
Right.
and you're publicly shamed.
Absolutely.
Or you feel publicly shamed,
Well,
anyways,
yeah,
right?
I ended up being publicly shamed in a way, that was just shocking. So yes, I lose my job, and I find out that there is, like the woman on the telephone said, there is video of me all over town, and I had not seen it yet, but I could only imagine what it was. And so I actually went into my station to resign, thinking if I just resign, maybe I'll go under the radar and it'll go away. And they told me just to hold on for a second, a week or so, and then they called me up and I was fired. And once that caught on, then I was getting inundated with requests for interviews from media all around the country, all around the globe. Truly, I had reporters from the UK calling me as well. But before I knew it, I'm sitting on the
You're
set
big
of
news.
Good Morning America.
You're big news.
Right?
You know, you've got to admit the tagline, the naked anchor,
news anchor is
news
what I
anchor,
was
is
being
very
called.
catchy. You make David Letterman's top 10 list. You do
yeah.
an interview with Diane Sawyer.
Yes.
Your story is big.
I'm invited on by Oprah, Inside Edition, The O'Reilly Factor. There was nowhere to hide. So even at our own house, we couldn't hide because everyone knew where we lived. So people would drive by honking their horns, yelling horrible things out the window. I mean, we had our shades down for most of that winter, so ashamed and feeling like we had nowhere to go and no escape.
Sooner or later, I imagine the world moves on to the next shiny ball.
Right.
Okay. So then what? Then what did you do then?
Well, it kept going on because the comments online, it manifested online. And the comments were so many of them were so cruel. There were some kind ones as well, but there were so many that were so cruel that it was really getting to me where I felt my only escape was to take my own life. And I had a drawer full of leftover prescription pain meds, and as long as I knew that drawer was there, that's where I started to find my comfort. So I can so relate today to young people who find themselves under attack and experiencing cyber cruelty in any way, whether they do something to bring it on themselves like I did, or they just happen to be target, how they feel that there is no escape and that's the only way. So that's really my whole purpose behind even coming out with this story all over again, is to make sure that people can hear that there is life after this.
So let's fast forward, and then we'll come back to the story. But you recount in your TED Talk that you end up on TV in an even bigger market
Yes.
than the job you lost.
Right.
So let's kind of skip, and then we'll come back to the story. But let's let everyone know that it kind of has a happy ending.
Yes.
How did that happen, that you lose your job and you end up in a bigger market?
Well, I was able, faith, family, and friends to the rescue as far as me being able to rise above and survive it. And then I developed an inner strength through all of that, where I actually we decided to fight back. And so 3 federal lawsuits later, I got copyright ownership to all of those images from Key West, giving me legal means then to stop the dissemination. And one of those lawsuits actually included Larry Flint, who they apparently ignored my copyright and put my picture in their magazine. So during all of this, a television station in Cleveland reached out, and they gave me a second chance to reclaim my career. So I got back to worked harder than ever before, because now I'm not only on a mission to be a good reporter, a good journalist, but also to prove to the world that I'm more than that one mistake. You know, so many people, something like this happens, and that's all people
Defines
see when
them.
they look at that person, right?
So tell our audience, you know, I was bullied in high school for something that I never did, but I was still bullied. But I could go home and I could get away from it because it was before cyberbullying.
Sure.
So for people out there that say, well, there's always been bullies around, you know,
Always.
there's always been
And
somebody.
there's always going to be.
There's always going to be. Tell people how it is so much, cyberbullying is so much different than regular bullying.
You know, I think you have to actually experience it to realize this, but it brings on a kind of a brainwashing that I don't think anyone really expects. When you see something written online, how often do we think, well, that it's online, that must be true, right? So if someone is saying something awful about you, it puts on a brainwashing, I have to say. And so you start to believe them, and you start to believe you're not worthy, and you start to believe your life is over, and it
So
it's
you were an
very
accomplished
perplexing.
adult when this happened.
Right.
And so if you could buy into it, you share some statistics. 43% of teens are cyberbullied and 67% of adults. Why should someone that thinks they've never been cyberbullied and will never have a reason to be cyberbullied, why should they care about your message?
Because no one is immune. So they haven't been cyberbullied yet. And, you know, I kind of narrow it down to cyber cruelty altogether.
Yes.
And I can tell you that a lot of the workforce will say that they've felt that they've somehow come under attack, sometimes by their coworkers. Somehow online, somewhere in the digital world, they've come under attack. So you've got to understand that no matter who you are, if you're a teenager in high school, if you're an executive, in fact, there was a story not long ago where a woman, a female executive, she was on a flight, she didn't like that she was sitting next to a baby, she asked the flight attendant to move her, the flight attendant wouldn't move her, so this executive had a bit of a tantrum. It was all recorded, and what happened was the flight attendant kept her job, but this executive lost hers. So we need to understand that there's always cameras around us. We need to understand how important it is to start to adjust our behavior, not only online, but offline too, in our real life. And take note that it could happen to anybody, and you never know who's got a camera on you.
Assume everybody does.
Right.
Today we are talking to an expert really on digital dangers, Catherine Bosley, who's a journalist and author, a speaker, a cyberbullying expert, and we are talking about kind of social media today. Alec Baldwin has gotten past that kind of horrendous recording. It was not a video, but the recording of a message he left his daughter several years ago.
Right.
Share with us how to get past. How do you get past it?
Well, you know, when I talk to junior high schools, colleges, corporations, all over the place, and what it comes down to is what I call a pact. You make a pact with yourself. So the P is for turn to your people. There's always going to be someone there for you that you can say, I wish I didn't do this, you know, help me. Because especially with kids, when they're embarrassed or when they're coming under attack or something bad is going on in their world, often they retract, they go and they hide in their bedroom, and they don't want to tell anybody about it because they're embarrassed that they're a victim or that they did something wrong. You need to talk to your people who you love and trust. A is for abandon, which means get away from the source of the pain. So shut down the computer, sign off of your social media, do what you need to do to get away from it.
Stop there. What advice do you have? I mean, it's like it calls to you, right?
Well,
even
this
if
is the
you
advice
know
I
that
have.
it is. But how do you tell someone to just not look at something?
Well, I can guarantee you the more you look at something coming at you, the worse it's going to seem. So really, I think a psychologist would even give that kind of advice.
Yes.
When someone is dealing with something that's painful, you need to step away from it. You need to push it out of your world.
Yes.
So abandon.
So
Yeah.
just like cold turkey, just
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, if it's on a particular platform, sign off of Twitter. Go and do things that make yourself happy. Spending time with friends, picking up a hobby, whatever it is. And of course, all that is going to be still on your mind, the hurt. But at least you'll get some preoccupation, and that will help kind of
Okay.
put it in a better perspective,
Yes.
I think. And so with PACT, C is
C.
for connect with professionals who are out there, people like myself, people like lawyers, people like law enforcement, people like counselors. There are so many people, and there are a number of websites too, anti-bullying websites, where people are there to help. It's never been like this before. When I was going through mine, there was nowhere I could turn to, but people are out there to help, absolutely. And T is for this too shall pass. And this is...
So it really is true that
True. It
this
is
too
so
shall
true.
pass.
It will, and I'm sure Alec Baldwin will say the same thing. This too shall pass. Like any kind of challenge that you go through in your life, any kind of tumult, it will eventually pass. Although it seems like it is the end of your world, we go on and we look back and we learn from these things, and we learn how to be a better person. We learn how to help others, and we learn to better navigate in our world to not let that happen again.
Well, there's one thing, and I like your pact, but there's one thing that I think is kind of a foundation for it. As an executive coach, one of my favorite words is grit.
Okay.
Life takes grit.
Yes,
Being
it
an
does,
entrepreneur
doesn't it?
takes grit. Getting through challenges takes grit. Where did your grit come from, and how do you get grit?
Right. You know, I think it's kind of a resilience. I do believe we all have an inner strength, and we don't all have the chance to tap into that inner strength. But sometimes when you come under such struggle, that inner strength has to surface, and you grab onto it. And you use other prongs as well. And I keep going back to faith, family, and friends. I give those three prongs a great deal of credit for helping me find my grit and my resilience and my inner strength.
Would you also use those three as an answer to this question? And I think that there's so many similarities between you and Monica Lewinsky.
Right.
And your.
I've heard that many times.
You were both victims, one of the early victims of cyberbullying.
Well, we were the first really to show the world how one moment, one mistake, how the cyber world could turn your real life world upside down permanently with something like that, right?
And she's gone on to be an activist and a loud opponent of cyberbullying. And so I ask, how do people like you and Monica Lewinsky not only share your story, but you open yourself over and over again every time you share your story?
It is painful. I have to say, the pain is never completely gone, but I think that's what energizes me, what fuels me to go on and to share the story. In the middle of my situation, when in my darkest day, when I truly thought that I wasn't going to survive it, I remember going for a run. Running was always my therapy, and literally falling to my knees and promising God if I could just get through it, I would someday make it count. So I got to the point where I was recovered. I was back into my career. Everything was stabilizing again. And there was just this aching inside of me that said, you made that pact. If you could survive this, you would make it count. So how are you making it count? And for my last couple of years, working full-time in Cleveland TV, I'd be sitting on the set reading these stories about kids who are taking their own lives because of the cyber cruelty. And it just was gnawing at me that if I could have just talked to them, if I could have spent just a little bit with them, maybe I could have helped. So that is what has me going on this mission now, and I am so in love with this mission. As much as it can be painful for me, when I see the spark in kids' eyes when I go in and talk to students of them saying, "You're right, I shouldn't be doing this," or "You're right, I can survive this."
And doesn't
It's
just
incredible.
your physical presence and your professional presence help? And that do they think, well, if it could happen to you, then I don't feel so badly that it happened to me?
I hope. That's the plan. So I am certainly using, my profession and, the achievements that I've had as an example of it can happen to anybody,
Now, you call them digital dangers. I
Right.
heard a quote on TV. I had to write it down because the other day, thoughtless people who hide like cowards
Yes.
is how social media was described.
Right.
What are some things that anyone and everyone should think about in the world of social media today?
Well, and in the world of digital today, because it's not just social media, it's also anything you do on your phone. And so digital, when you're texting or emailing
And yet,
or anything.
the smartest people in the world will still put in an email something,
Right.
right?
That'll come back and haunt them.
I tell my clients, if you're not okay with it being forwarded to the world or printed out
Don't
and
put
put
it
on
out
every
there.
car at the mall,
Don't put it right.
then it shouldn't be. But yet,
True.
So
true.
Can you weigh in? Why?
Right. I don't think people understand the consequences. So I don't think that I don't think our consciousness is caught up with the reality that we are living in today. And so, like I said, until it happens to you or it happens to someone you love, you don't quite understand it. And more people now are experiencing exactly what it's like. So more and more people are out there who can say, be so careful. And hopefully the message is starting to sink in, and you will think twice before hitting send. Yes.
If there was one thing that people could do differently as a result of hearing you, either hearing you today, hearing you speak to junior high kids or high schools or executives, if there was one thing that people would do differently, what would you want that one thing to be?
I think that it's really important to think about what you do online as far as how it might affect other people. So as much as I'm telling people to be careful what they're doing and to not put themselves in a situation where they could end up being a target, understand that even when you hit a like on something, something that's mean, that said something about someone else, you're contributing to the bullying. And I think we need to all understand when you put something out there about somebody, how would you feel if you were on the other end of it? Yeah, so I guess that's what I would hope people really think about.
Now, you talk about your story, but do people bring it up to you? Do others get past it? Have they gotten past it? Or are you kind of a target at any time? Somebody may just bring it up to you when you meet them, or yes?
Yeah, it's part of me. As much as when I got back on the set and moved on, I thought, I just want to pretend this never happened. And the truth is, I'm so glad it happened. And the truth is, it's part of me. And it comes at me. During the couple of years where I was hoping it would go away, you'd get those emails or you'd get those social media posts. And certainly hurtful. But now I'm understanding why it all happened, and that's because I've got this thing that I need to do.
You have a platform.
Yes.
In the last couple minutes, I'm going to ask you for 1 and 2 word answers on some fun things that have nothing to do with Key West. Something that would surprise viewers about the glamorous world of television.
Not glamour. Not behind the scenes.
The last song you downloaded.
Oh, it's probably a Bruce Springsteen song.
Your last DIY project. Are you a do-it-yourselfer?
I am so not. So I couldn't even tell you that. I'm so sorry. He was probably trying to clean my computer, fix my computer. That's about as DIY as it goes.
That was my printer I was trying to fix.
Yes.
Last time you experienced joy.
Oh, this morning?
Good. Favorite guilty food?
Chocolate, anything.
Milk or dark?
Milk.
I'm a milk too.
Yeah, I know dark is better, but
that's
milk,
what they tell
yeah.
you, but I'm a milk chocolate. Person in history you would most like to talk to?
This is strange, but Johnny Cash. I just want to talk to him.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a big fan growing up.
And my last question, what would you tell your 23-year-old self?
It will be okay. I actually wrote an article on that recently, but that, it's not just one choice that will determine what your life is going to be like. It's a culmination of choices altogether. You know, that one choice that I made, it sent me into this situation, but I also made other choices to embrace it and to use it for something. So one bad choice isn't always so bad. One good choice isn't quite as good as you think. Your life is really made up of the culmination of choices, so understand that. Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Yes.
Recently, I watched a special about JFK Jr.'s wedding weekend. In 1996, not one of the guests, not one had a cell phone. I found that amazing, to be reminded of a time everyone was not taking a photo, texting, tweeting, uploading, downloading something. Our guest today bounced back from what for some could have been a career or even a life-ending experience. While she continues to work in television news as a freelancer and instructs at the university level, Catherine's priority is working as a speaker, consultant, and personal coach. Our guest today, Catherine Bosley, has shown us that there is life after adversity, and perhaps because of adversity. Thank you for joining us on Forum 360. I'm Leslie Ungar with your Global Outlook with a local view. And in one word, the best thing about Mahoning and Trumbull counties.
Grit.
All right.
Go back to grit, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.